Hi. One of the questions I often get asked is how much should I spend on a bottle of wine? And that's kind of a tricky question for a lot of reasons. First of all, if you asked me that 5 years ago, I'd give you one amount. If you ask it to me today, I'd give you another amount. 5 years from now, probably a third amount. Part of that is the prices change. We've got things in our economy called inflation, deflation, supply, demand. All these little factors kind of go up, down, and sideways. So over a 10-year span, you could have the same wine in the sense of from the same vineyard, a year or two, a couple of years old, that will go for three different prices. Not surprising at all. How much you pay for a loaf of bread 5 years ago? How much you going to pay 5 years from now? So it's going to change. So to keep that from being, I don't want to just come out and say, oh, you need to spend this many dollars, or this many pounds, or this many euros, or this many yen. First of all, that would be very complex to do because I don't know how much all those are worth relative to each other. And it's too much work. I drink wine to enjoy myself. I don't want to make a job out of it or a chore, that kind of job. Yeah, I can enjoy having a job in wine. But anyway, so let's look at it a different way. First of all, why are you going to drink that bottle of wine? Is this just for yourself and a spouse or significant other, just at home having an evening during the week, after work type thing? Something not special, just an everyday type of thing. Well, that's where you go with what's called a table wine. Just kind of an everyday wine. You usually want to spend less for that than if you were going out to or having friends over for a really good dinner where you're putting a lot of effort into the food. So it kind of depends on the situation, how much you're going to spend. You got your low end, you've got your intermediate, and then your higher end. So again, that's kind of doesn't tell you anything, does it? Well, I thought about this for a long time. I kind of came up with something that I think will be fairly universal. So what I tell you for how much to spend now should actually be true 10 years from now. Now, there's a few caveats, and you'll probably guess them, but anyway, I look at wine, or a bottle of wine, in terms of movie tickets. If you're going to go out at, say, 7 in the evening or 8 or whatever, the prime expensive time for going to a movie, going to a first-run movie, how much you're going to pay for a ticket? Okay, that ticket price, kind of from zero up to that price, and maybe a little bit more, is what I would call a table wine price. Now, if you're going to have something a little more upscale, it's Sunday dinner, or you're having some of your friends over, you're going a little bit more upscale than just hamburgers on the grill. You probably want to go a little bit higher than that on your price, maybe 2 tickets. So figure out how much a first-run movie is in your area and whatever currency you use, and double that. Just put whatever monetary unit you have, whatever those tickets cost, kind of use that as your rule of thumb. So I'm just going to talk about tickets now. So you go out, go to the store, you want to buy a bottle of wine, and you don't know a whole lot about it, but if I pay more, is it going to be better? If I pay less, is it going to be crap? Yes and no. Yes and no. Sometimes you can find a really good bottle of wine for an inexpensive amount. Sometimes you can find a really expensive bottle of wine that tastes pretty crappy. Hopefully, if you're shelling out big bucks for a bottle of wine, it's going to taste good. Most of the time it will. But there's a big difference between a 1-ticket wine and a 2-ticket wine. There's less difference between a 2-ticket and a 3-ticket. So if that kind of gives you a range, you might think of it in units of 10. I'm going to pick dollars. That's what I'm used to. So if you pay $10 for a bottle of wine, there's more of a difference between a $10 and a $20 than between a 20 and a 30. There's more difference between a 20 and a 30 than there's a 30 to 40. Now, when you get up to something really expensive, say like what I consider expensive, something around the order of 7, 8, 9, 10 movie tickets, then you should notice should be a really, really good taste to that bottle. It should taste really good. Much better than your 1-ticket bottle, but it's not going to be 10 times better, probably. There might be exceptions to that, but I've had some high-end wine, very expensive wines, and I'm not usually overly impressed. Occasionally, yes. I did have one that what I would call probably about a 12-ticket bottle, and a while back, and I was just amazed at this stuff. I didn't know how much it cost when I first tasted it, and I said, "Ooh, what is this? I want some." So the friend who said, "How much is it?" Well, the person pouring the wine answered the how much first part, which is probably good for me, because I already had a few too many sips at that point. May have bought one. But anyway, yeah, the higher the amount, the dollar or the price, the number of tickets you're paying for it, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that much better. So kind of rule of thumb is how many tickets, movie tickets, could you buy for that bottle? If and going the other way, it's like just a kind of ordinary evening at home, maybe go for a one ticket bottle, maybe a little more, a little less, in that range though. Having some friends over, another couple, or 2 or 3 friends, whatever it happens to be, especially if they're wine drinkers, you want to step it up a bit, go to 2 ticket. And if you're having maybe a special dinner party of some sort, maybe look at least one bottle, being a 3 or 4 ticket, depending on how many people you have. Enough so everybody gets at least one glass poured. But kind of spending that much for one course, and then maybe step it back a little bit to the 2 ticket range. Depends on your budget too. I mean, if you got money coming out of your ears, fine. Go out and buy 70 ticket bottles. But I have found people who, when they're first getting started, you're better off staying with your less expensive wines until you know what you're looking for. You start to taste, you start to experience, you start to smell. You look at these things, and then once you know more, it's easier to begin to differentiate how good or bad a wine is. You can find something that just tastes great to you for a 1 ticket. And then maybe a couple of years down the road, after you've been doing this for a while, you go back to that same level of wine, and it tastes kind of flat and one-dimensional. It's like when you're a kid, you may have seen a movie where, oh, this is so exciting, this is so wonderful. Then 20, 30 years later, you watch that movie, the exact same movie as an adult, and you think, oh my God, those actors were so bad. They were just, saying their lines horribly. They didn't really act well. But as a kid, you enjoyed it because you didn't know any better. You didn't have any experience going to movies. The more experience you have in something, the more you can appreciate the nuances. And wine is no exception. So, the point here is expensive wine is not necessarily that much better than less expensive wine. So I look for inexpensive wine versus cheap wine. Cheap wine is what I call inexpensive bad wine. And there's a few brands out there that pride themselves on going for $2 or $3 a bottle. Most of those are worth exactly what you pay for it. Excuse me, not $2 or $3, half a ticket or a quarter ticket. If you want to go back to that scale. So, yeah, if it's a really, really cheap wine, it's probably going to taste really, really cheap. If it's one that's around a movie ticket in price, it may or may not be good. Some will be better than others. I always kind of find it a challenge to find a really good one for that same price. So anyway, kind of use that as your rule of thumb. How many tickets could I buy for the same price as that bottle of wine? Go that way and kind of use that in your buying scale. Initially, when you're starting out with wine, like I say, stick to your 1 ticket bottles. That way, if you don't like it, you're not wasting a lot of money. And it gives you something to practice on. Learn about wine cheaply, inexpensively, and then work your way up from there. So in the meantime, cheers.